Having never been either a father or a daughter, I often struggle to understand the mythicized bond between the two. Hollywood can't stop itself from pushing the slightly creepy daddy's girl thing on us every so often, and I mean, I literally grew up watching Vince McMahon borderline try to smash his own daughter. But that notwithstanding, there is still something about the bond between a young woman and an older version of said woman who also happens to be a man, especially in wrestling. Charlotte and Ric Flair, Tamina and Jimmy Snuka, Natalya and Jim Neidhart, we love a father-daughter gimmick in wrestling. And a quick nose through both the Performance Center and the Indies suggests there's plenty more to come in the next few years. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 9 wrestlers' daughters following in their father's footsteps. Number 9. Amy Hennig. Yes, that's right, Curtis Axel isn't the only wrestling fruit of Mr. Perfect's loins. As early as 2008, his younger sister Amy was carving out a successful career for herself on the US indie scene. And that's way before any of us had ever heard the word McGillicuddy. While it's admittedly unclear precisely where she plies her trade in 2018, reports are that she is still sporadically active in her native Minnesota. Sadly, Amy never made it to WWE, as her emergence in the sport would have been perfectly timed with her brother's arrival on the company's main roster. It's not often that we've seen brother-sister wrestler pairings, and the children of Mr. Perfect arriving in his old stomping ground at the same time would have been a great angle. Number 8. Kyla Armstrong. Not somebody whose family legacy is perhaps immediately obvious from her name, but Kyla Armstrong's connection to the business is arguably as strong as anybody's on this list. She's the daughter of WWE producer and referee Scott Armstrong, yes, him who got fired by Triple H that time, and her uncle Brian is the man responsible for this whole Becky Charlotte mess that we've been watching. Or the Road Dogg, as he's more commonly known. Her uncles Steve, Brad, and Brian were all wrestlers themselves and appeared in promotions ranging from New Japan to WCW to Smoky Mountain and even the old WWF. And her grandfather, Bullet Bob Armstrong, is a WWE Hall of Famer. Kyla admittedly hasn't signed with WWE despite numerous tryouts, but rule nothing out in the future. Number 7. Dakota Runnels. Cast your minds back to 1997 if you would be so kind, and Goldust bringing out his wife and, these are WWE's words, not mine, adorable daughter prior to his match with Rockabilly. Said Totes Adorb's offspring was Dakota, his real-life child with Terry Runnels. This was her making her TV debut in WWE, and pretty much constantly since, it's been speculated she'd step through the ropes on her own terms one day. It's never quite happened, and for years it looked like Dakota had stepped away from wrestling entirely, but earlier in the year she resurfaced in an angle for Overdrive Wrestling. On her first night back on wrestling programming, she was kidnapped by Robbie E, reminiscent of The Undertaker's famous abduction of Stephanie McMahon. What poor luck. Number 6. Dynamite Doll. Thanks to his recent exploits on World of Sport, and in fairness a flourishing career on the Indies and in Japan, most people are aware that the British Bulldog's son, Davey Smith Jr., is a pretty successful second-generation wrestler. But we're not here to talk about sons, are we? Bulldog's famous tag team partner, Dynamite Kid, a man referenced by virtually every single technical wrestler currently working when you ask them about their major influences, also spawned a child who looked to follow in their father's footsteps, albeit as more of a valet than an actual wrestler. Ladies and gentlemen, Bronwyn Billington, aka Dynamite Doll. Growing up in the extended Canadian wrestling family, Billington naturally spent some time in Stu Hart's dungeon, where her husband, Dynamite Dan, also trained. The pair have since worked on and off for assorted Canadian promotions. Number 5. Xia Brookside. At the time of me recording this, Xia Brookside is about to face Io Shirai in the first round of the Mae Young Classic. Now, barring an upset that would legitimately be up there with some of the biggest we've ever seen in WWE, she will be eliminated at this point. But the fact that at just 19, WWE have seen fit to put her up against someone of Shirai's stature in a televised match speaks volumes about her ability. The 19-year-old is the daughter of former NXT senior trainer Robbie Brookside, and, despite being a mere 3 years into her career, can boast wins across Europe, across America, in Japan, and even, brace yourself, in Defiant. She has already signed to NXT UK and will be a part of the emerging women's division on that show. Number 4. Tessa Blanchard. Apologies for the Defiant/WCPW barrage here, but I will take any excuse you give me to mention that Tessa Blanchard was involved in my favourite match we ever put on. Yes, the mixed tag with Bea Priestley, Ospreay and Ricochet. Watch it right now if you haven't already. Anyway, more recently, Tessa has been constantly linked with moves to WWE, big spots in Japan, and is currently the Impact Women's Champion. She won at All In, has wrestled all over the world, and is somehow still only 23 years old. Her father, though, if you haven't pieced it together already, was Tully Blanchard, one of the original Four Horsemen, along with Arn Anderson, and Ric Flair. To say that Tessa will go on to leave as big an impact in the industry as her old man is hyperbole in the extreme, but that said, ask anyone who's already worked with her, and the potential to change the game for women's wrestling is definitely there. Number 3, Rachael Ellering. Now, strictly speaking, if I wanted to say that Rachael Ellering was, air quotes, following in her father's footsteps, then she'd have to be up in a shark cage somewhere watching two absolutely massive blokes in flak jackets throw their opponents around like empty tracksuits. However, as regular viewers to my list will be well aware, I'm quite happy to stretch the entry slightly because, altogether now, it's my list! Much like Xia Brookside above, Ellering is currently facing a tough first round in the Mae Young Classic, albeit under a WWE name of Rachel Evers. She has, though, already been spotted in NXT working with Ember Moon, Alexa Bliss, and Liv Morgan over the years, as well as featuring in the Women's Championship #1 contender Battle Royale last year. Currently, though, she's usually found in Shimmer or across the sea working at Stardom in Japan. Number 2, Noelle Foley. So you'll all recall with pinpoint accuracy, I'm sure, that on the WWE Network's seminal series, Holy Foley, Mrs. Foley's baby boy's baby girl was beginning her journey into the world of actually being a wrestler. The results were mixed. What is she up to now, I hear you cry? Well, I'm glad you asked, because Human Posy Vibes Insta account Simon Miller caught up with the future Mrs. Pacitti at StarCast this month and asked her.
Injuries.
Someday, Noelle, someday. Number 1, Simone Johnson. Some people might tell you that being 17 years old is slightly too young to be training to be a wrestler. But when your dad is quite literally The Rock, then common sense, and indeed any sort of medical science, probably mean absolutely nothing to you. What I'm trying to say here is that yes, Simone Johnson is currently at the Performance Center on her way to being the 4th generation of Johnson in WWE. Now, I'm going to have to double check this, but if Simone Johnson does make it into WWE, she might well be the first ever 4th generation superstar in the company. Her father was, yes, lol, obviously, The Rock. His father was Rocky Johnson, and before him was Peter Maivia. All legitimate legends of their era. These are admittedly massive, massive shoes for Simone to fill, but hey, if any family can do it, it's this one.